When we think about representations of place value, two resources spring to mind: the place value counter and base 10 equipment. Okay, both are quite popular. Both are equally useful in the primary mathematics classroom, but they don't do exactly the same job, which is why we need to think deeply about which we use and when. And it's all about that why what we want to get from our pupils, what we want to support them in understanding and representing, and then choosing the tool that's right for the job or the task at hand. So if we think about base 10 equipment, we will be looking to explore the relative magnitude between ones, tens, and 100s. Okay, I think we get diminishing returns after a while, but what we can do is we can explore how the relationship between 1 and 10, 110, or we've got 10 ones. And then equally, we could choose to have a line of 100 ones, but I think this lateral movement and the square pattern is an expression of 100 and its relationship with 1 and 10 in a much more succinct and elegant way. And so if we want to explore the relative magnitude between 1, 10, and 100, and we can do it with 1,000, we can definitely use base 10 equipment to explore this relationship as well as number in space. And so I think in this example, we can easily bring the groups together, we can aggregate them, and we end up with our new sum. Okay. But at this point, I think, like I said, you get diminishing returns and you've got to decide what you want to focus your attention on and why. Okay. Because if at this point they haven't started to internalize a sense of magnitude, you need to ask yourself why. Okay. Because you will have gone through presumably lots of the steps necessary to represent number in this way. And so you're asking yourself, are the pupils ready to begin to manipulate larger numbers, numbers beyond what we can hope to physically represent in a different way? And quite often, it might not be possible for us to have physical base 10 equipment in our classes. And so I'd like to draw our attention towards MathSpot, which has this function whereby we can have 12 ones. And when we exchange, we end up with 110 and 2 ones. And it's really useful for exploring the behaviors and the relationships when it's not possible to actually physically have them in front of us in the classroom. So in terms of magnitude, our first choice is always going to be base 10 equipment. But we also have place value counters. And for me, it's when we want to get a little bit closer to mental manipulation. Because as we can see, we can represent the process we need them to go through mentally, but we're not actually exploring the relationship between the numbers because they're almost identical, and each digit will look exactly the same. And so it's almost like this is the stepping stone, when we want pupils to increase the rate at which they manipulate larger numbers. And so for instance, here you can see we've got 6,000s in the end. If I were to physically have 6,000 on a table, then it might look something like this. Okay, and I think that if you got your whiteboard and then you've got your maths book, and if you imagine two children are sharing the same table, you've actually got very little space. And that's when I think you get your diminished returns, because those larger, although they're fantastic at showing the relative magnitude, in terms of pupils manipulating, you're getting much less of a payoff for the actual hassle that is required to sort of set this up. Whereas if you have your place value counters and you're thinking, okay, the focus is on mental manipulation, then you've got plenty of space for your maths book, for your whiteboard, and for your counters at the same time. And I think the decision is, what are we trying to achieve? Do we want to support our pupils in developing mental models or the relative size of the digits in a number, or do we want them to have a mental model of the processes? That's where our decision, when we're thinking deeply, is which of those do we want to achieve? And then that makes our decision for us.